Usually people will go in and say, well, here's how so many people handle their cancer. There's two diseases that run parallel. One is cancer, the other is ignorance. These are correlated diseases because we're all totally ignorant when we first hear that diagnosis. So you need to treat both of them. You need to treat the ignorance and you need to treat the cancer. And the two are symbiotic in that way. Conventional wisdom. I want you to be able in your careers to give a proper response, perhaps to yourself, but still proper, when you hear the term conventional wisdom. That is probably the most misused term in our sciences today. It was coined originally by Harvard professor John Kenneth Galbraith, who said it describes that body of knowledge that's so pervasive in our world that it's assumed to be true. And he then added, the trouble with conventional wisdom is it's almost always wrong, and programs based on it are usually doomed to failure. Just something to think about. I'm not telling you to throw away your textbooks and all this. I'm just saying to think. Continue to think. If not, you'll be an average person. You will be successful. You'll make a lot of money. But that spark of creativity that will distinguish you from the crowd will not burn brightly in you. The nicest invitation I guess I ever had, they invited me to give the inaugural lecture at Tarleton State a few months back on the subject of creativity in science and engineering and the role it is to play. And more especially, why is it that a bright young entering freshman, just so full of creativity, original ideas, too many times academia can beat this person down into the dirt until they evolve. They start with a right brain person and they evolve a perfect left brain model. Now, this is the way of things. Nobody's faulting that. You can have a good life, make a lot of money, do well. But for the 4 or 5 of you in this audience that will fall into the trap of creativity, these remarks are intended. I say that creativity is the aristocracy of mental illness. It's an aristocrat because of its potential to do so much in the world, either for good or bad. It's an illness because it hurts so much. And if you don't believe me, just try to give creative ideas to people that don't want to hear them. And enough on that. You'll find out that for yourself. You won't need me to tell you about that. Develop your healing options. Develop a guided imagery program. It's part of the healing program. The mind-body connection has been around prehistory. There are cave paintings that indicate this was used. We know from people like Hippocrates, Plato, Galen, they all wrote that it's folly to treat the body without treating the mind. The two are inseparable. They go together. For hundreds of years, this was just Holy Writ, more or less. Then for several hundred years, through the Dark Ages, we began to drift away from that. And in the 1930s, somebody in a granting institution gave a large grant to some entity, some university, but put the stipulation in it that there had to be all science, quotation mark. There could be none of the mind and body stuff in it. Unfortunately, that sort of grew or evolved or morphed into a policy nowadays. There are no mind-body arms in clinical trials. Those of us who have advocated that, it's fallen on deaf ears. I have in my file an email from a friend of mine, Dr. Greg Precioni, who is the director of clinical psychiatry at Harvard Med School, in which he says, don't give up, Jerry. Keep trying. They won't listen to me. Maybe they'll listen to you. Isn't this stupid? I mean, here's a guy at that level telling a little country boy from Granbury, to keep trying. Maybe you succeed where I can't. But good news, folks. Times are changing. Things are beginning to happen. Candace Pert, with her book, Molecules of Emotion, this was one of the real starts of the change. That's what it looks like. Candace discovered the neuropeptide receptor. She defined a lot of these mechanisms we're talking about in our imagery now. And I thought I'd show you this while I was at it. That's Mehmet Oz's book, Healing from the Heart. That was the first place my story was ever published. My review of this book is still up on Amazon.com. So, in case you wanted, I didn't just fall off the turnip truck. So, we in engineering like to visualize, what is this thing we're trying to create? What are we trying to do? What are we trying to build? What will it look like? What do we want it to look like? So I set about to think for myself, what does health look like? You say, I want you to be a healthy person. What does that person look like? Well, I contend that health is a nice balance of these three entities. I think you've all seen cases where a strong mind, limited by a weak body, or a strong-minded body with a tortured soul, all these things, they have to be in balance. And in my imagery program, I attempt in a pitiful amateurish way to give some thought to all three of these. But the thought I would like to enforce and leave with you is, if health is a balance of these three parts, then why do we continue to leave mind out of cancer treatment? It makes no sense. Importance of beliefs and attitudes are, well, they're just powerful. Cancer cells are vulnerable. They're not the invulnerable monstrosities that go wild killing everything in sight. They're fairly weak, poorly organized, stupid cells. They're stupid because they're eating the host that's feeding them. That's not the mark of an intelligent creature. They can't even repair themselves. So you might say, well, why have we been afraid of all these years? It's a good question. Since the elements of the human immune system have been shown to be able to kill any cancer cell ever found. And keep these pictures in mind. We have our people doing imagery visualize this. The top one, the T cell. They kill by penetrating a rapier in the hand of a master warrior. Hits the cell, nicks it, damages it. It can't repair itself. It dies. The macrophage, the giant eaters, they've been waiting for years in your body to defend you. They eat these cancer cells, literally chew them up and digest them, and they hold up the antigen on the surface of the cell for others to see. The NK cell, natural killer cells, they contain a chemical called perforin, which will kill anything that walks, flies, or crawls. They inject the cell with this deadly perforin, and it's doomed. Now, how do they know to do this? How do they know to hit this? It's easy. Every cancer cell has on its surface something we call antigen. Antigen is it's analogous to a fingerprint. A fingerprint is not a person, but it's a recognizable part of a person that has put many a person behind bars. Same is true here. In the imagery, we shine the light in the body to illuminate the battlefield, let them see the antigen, recognize it, go to it, and destroy it. And you don't have to teach the cells how to do it. They know what to do, and they know how to do it. These three ways of thinking you're going to encounter. You'll encounter them in all walks of life, many in your attitude toward your academic program, certain classes. The first and worst, and I've seen all of these, and I know what I'm talking about. The person says, I have cancer, and I'll be dead in a year from now, and there's not a thing I can do about it. I know how it kills. I've read the statistics. I saw what happened to poor old Aunt so-and-so. I wouldn't waste a lot of time with that person because there's probably somebody down the road that needs you more. I've come to that conclusion. A better, but still falls short, is the so-called positive attitude. That's, I have cancer, but that's okay because I'll be alive a year from now. I'm positive. Well, that's certainly a lot better than the first. But the problem with it is it doesn't take the disease seriously. And it should.